This is one of those perfect examples of just really being disciplined and taking everything you know into actually being used. So basically just taking Carlos's method of kind of using an area of support as supply and demand as well. I seen this set of lows and then this kind of pairing with it. So I drag that up until you kind of reach both of those. And then just back to the actual time scale that you're using, I was looking for where price came and bounced off here from. I had it down to this candle over here. That's what it's being based off of for the low point, the demand. So after seeing that, I will look. I'm deleting this bottom one because that's the more refined zone. But I'm looking at this gap right here, which it's there. I'm just taking into account that the gap is there, but you'll see down here it doesn't get utilized. It just ends up going through and touching the actual zone instead. So just to keep things a little clean and get rid of those. This was for a higher time frame. Come back to that later. But basically, yeah, we're looking at price coming in. I figure this was a lot higher of a time frame, so kind of zoomed out a little. You got price forming a low point, a higher low point, or no, this is a lower high. Yes, lower high point, lower low, test that same high. Now you have a higher low, which indicates, hey, you might be swapping and breaking past it, which it does. So this is the area that I start to look at for supply and demand as far as a setup that you would take. This pushes above. We're not looking at that. Oh, was I? You know what I missed? I missed this. This is what's throwing me off. The gap that was here. I ended up bringing the box, the zone, up to that gap. So that's going to explain the entry here. But basically, there was a lot of movement here, so I kind of went up in time frames just to kind of see what made more sense. And this is the entry we ended up going with just because you're past this low point where you've made a higher low now. You're kind of flowing with that price where you're expecting it to go. So that was one trade that I saw just based off Carlos's support, or yeah, his support theory. But then over here, just drop back down to 5 minute reset. So now you can see that move clearly. Same concept, you have price coming back into that zone. It pushes off and formed a new high above all of these. So that's where I took the fibs and drew from the top here and then the bottom. And I pulled it across so you can see your projection zones. But then over here, as we look at price, this is kind of where I mixed a little bit of cues and just market structure and everything that flows together. I'm using fibs for the whole buying, you got to swing low, swing high. This is where price makes its lowest point. And every time after that, you have candles that close above. So being that we had this high here and it wasn't broken really until this push up, I'm using this as the basis for the supply or for the demand zone. And when you're on US 30 or NAS, the 3 minute generally sometimes it's a lot more clear. So this is the push up. I kind of took the zone making sure that I took that low in with it. But you got this candle tapping back into it. It goes below it, but the candle still closes above. So in one lower time frame, this probably was a nice swing down, and then it just pushed right back up real quick. But after that, you skip that candle, or you can kind of include it, but this right here is the guaranteed one because it definitely closes above it. But from that point, you would be in, and then TP gets right here. You have a little fluctuation just because I had to break past this previous high. But if you're down here, you're in profit while this is moving. It's not as risky of a trade because that's fluctuating in profit, not drawdown. But just look at it, it's like clear. You have a higher low point. Right next to it, you have another higher low point, and it just keeps pushing and creating those up until it doesn't. But that's where we currently are in time right now. But this is just one of those very clean mix-ups of Doyle doesn't teach Fibonacci anymore. Carlos doesn't use Fibonacci ever. But it makes great TP zones. And then it's kind of like a subtle reminder for me as well. You know, it's like, don't take a trade up near the top of this, or if I am looking for buys, you know, the further I am to the bottom of it without it breaking structure. That just helps me remind myself, like, hey, these are definitely your swing high and swing low points. So as long as it's fluctuating within here, once you see structure start to shift upwards towards your goal, you know, you can look for those and have a higher probability of making the play.